Dr. Goh is the Chief Executive Officer for Tertiary at the Help Education Group, where he provides strategic leadership for Help University and Help Academy. His foundational impact on our educational landscape is profound, as he was the founding CEO of Help Education Services, the very body that established Help International School in Kuala Lumpur. An academic at heart, Dr. Goh was previously the Vice President of Help University and was the founder and Dean of the Faculty of Behavioral Science. Under his visionary leadership, the faculty grew into one of the largest psychology programs in Southeast Asia. His distinguished leadership extends globally. Beyond the boardroom and the lecture hall, Dr. Goh is deeply committed to practical nationwide well-being. He is also a well-known media contributor, and most pertinently for today's discussion, he has conducted parenting workshops for over 5,000 parents across the country. Please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to our esteemed speaker, Dr. Goh Chee Leong. Dr. Goh, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dato. And thank you all parents here for joining us for this webinar at night. As Dato has mentioned, I'm a psychologist in terms of background, but also I share a common concern with all of you because I'm also part of the Methodist School family. I'm a former old boy of MBSKL, and I currently sit in the council for MBSKL. For many years, I was actually on the Methodist Council of Education. So as Dato has mentioned, I do have a heart for education, whether it's schools and universities. And she's absolutely right when she says that there is a need among all of us as parents, as well as educators, to understand our children better. And there's a lot we can do to support our children so that some of the distressing things that we have been seeing in schools can be avoided. So whether it is bullying, violence in schools, mental health issues like depression and suicide. So my sharing today is really to help give all of us some ideas as parents and as educators about how we can, through understanding our children better, provide a better support structure for all of them. All right, so I'm going to share some slides just to check. I hope all of you can see my first slide, which is entitled Raising and Educating Resilient Children. I will make these slides available through the Old Boys, and the Council Network. So if you want to download them or you want to get them off me, later on I'll share my email address as well. So feel free, you don't need to copy anything down. I'm happy to email them to you, right? I think the quick background to the sharing here, just to frame what I'm going to be talking about is, I think we all realize that, we live in a very, very challenging world, right? And our children are growing up in an environment where they're going to need the mental toughness, the resilience, the inner strength to deal with a lot of the challenges that will come to them when they grow up to be young adults. All right. So whether it's the challenge of university, getting jobs, starting their first employment, and we know work is not easy. It is a very disruptive age, thanks to AI, thanks to what we call the VUCA world, that is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. So we realize that our children are going to be entering the workforce at a time that is a lot more dynamic than we are used to when we were growing up. And so one of the first things that I think we need to acknowledge is that our children are probably going to be growing up in a world where they face challenges that we didn't face. When we were, in school, when we were starting to work, in the 80s, in the 90s, I mean, we didn't have AI, we didn't have social media, we didn't have cyberbullying. There are a lot of things that our children are having to deal with now. Now, that's not to say that we didn't have a tough upbringing. I mean, we had different challenges, all right? But the kinds of resilience that our children need now is probably a bit different from what we are used to, all right? So what I'm going to share today is 7 qualities that I believe our children need to develop as they're growing up in order to build the resilience that they need to be young adults that are going to survive and thrive the challenges that they will face now in their schools as teenagers, but also later on as young adults. Okay, so there are 7 things I'll go through. And after the sharing, Dato is going to lead us in a time of question and answer. So if you have questions, later on, Dato can process them and I'm happy to answer in any way I can, all right? So let's start with number 1, all right, which is adaptability. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, our children are going to grow up in an age where they need to adapt and be agile because the world is changing so much faster now. So just as an example, I believe the World Economic Forum had what do you call it, estimated that our children's generation, by the time they come out and work, they're going to have to change careers on average 5 to 7 times. Now, when I say change careers, it's not change companies, it's actually change professions. And that is as a result of artificial intelligence, in a sense, disrupting the workforce. The fact that there are going to be certain jobs in the next 4 or 5 years that are completely taken over by AI. And that's again something that we are not used to in our early working life. But I think we already see it now, right? I'm sure many of you are working in industries where you can see the power of AI and it's just a tip of the iceberg. I mean, right now, the way we look at AI and Gen AI is like it's a toy in our pocket that, like ChatGPT that helps us do research. But when you talk to people in technology, they will tell you that, that's nothing, all right? The full power and potential of AI is yet to be seen. And that's going to have huge disruptions on the workforce, which means that our children, by the time they come out and work, they may have to change job, change careers, change professions, upskill, retrain themselves 5 to 7 times, right? And so to have that kind of mental strength to be prepared for that, right? The fact that sometimes they could be retrenched because AI takes their job, or the whole company may close down, whole industries may actually completely go bankrupt because of AI. They need this ability to adapt, all right? Um, I've described it here to be like water, all right? Water is absolutely fluid. It can fit into any container. It can fit into a cup. It can fit into a plate. It can fit into a flat surface, small surfaces, big surfaces. So that's sort of I think, the spirit and the mindset that we're trying to raise with our children. And the fact that you're not always going to get what you predict, all right? You need to be ready to roll with the punches. And these kind of skills, I suggest, are only learned through practice. So this is not a lecture you can give your children and they know what to do. Children learn to be flexible and adaptable when they are forced to do it. So as parents, we need to be willing to expose children, to change. The fact that sometimes plans change. We wanted to go on a holiday to Penang, but now they're flooding there, so we can't go to Penang. We have to change our holiday plans. All right, or we wanted to, your plan was you wanted to join these clubs in society, but now it's no longer available. So you need to accept that, and you need to make other plans. You wanted to spend time. You wanted to spend your birthday with your best friends this Saturday, but now they've got influenza A. You have to change your plans, right? So these are all examples of how in daily life, I think as adults, we know we may plan, but the plans may have to change and be adaptable because the reality sets in. All right. They always say, I think the saying is that, human man plans and, God, disbands, right? And so the idea here is that, parents, our role is not to protect our children from the change. Our role is actually to coach our children how to adapt to the change. All right. And I think that's the way, to help them. So I'm not saying that we should be purposely cruel to them, and make life difficult. They will already be subject to these changes and disruptions, but our job is not to shelter them from changes or shelter them from disappointments. Yeah. Our job is to actually say, okay, when Papa and Mommy go through a change like that, how do we adapt? Okay. Number two, second element of resilience is what we call an internal locus of control. This is a psychological term that refers to focusing on things under our control. The fact that we shouldn't stress or waste time complaining about or worrying about things that we have no control over. All right. So the principle here is, in any situation in life, there are things you can control and there are things you can't control. Right. And I think as adults, most of us know that this is a reality. In any situation, this is the fact. There are some things you cannot change and there are some things you can change. And the skill that we are trying to teach our children here is always focus on what you can control. Okay, so as an example, you're an SPM student. You can't change the fact that you have to sit for your SPM. All right, you can't change the fact when is SPM scheduled, which I believe is soon, right? Next month. All right, so you can't change the SPM schedule. You can't change the SPM curriculum. You can't change what is coming out in the SPM paper. You're not setting the paper. Somebody in the Ministry of Education is setting the paper. All right. Now, what you can change, what you can control is how prepared you are for the exam, right? What information you have in your head when you walk into the exam hall, now that one is under your control. How well prepared you are, how many past year questions you have taken, how practiced you are for the exam. Okay, so that's a good example of, so stop complaining and stressing about things you cannot do anything about. Focus on what you can do. All right. And this is true for relationships as well. When maybe your children are having a tough time with their friends, or they are having a tough time with one of the teachers in the school, and they feel that the teacher is being a bit unfair on them, a bit harsh on them. So we say, hey, look, you can't control how other people relate to you, but you can control how you relate to them. You can control how you communicate to them. Maybe you want, to find ways to communicate to the teacher or to your friends how you feel, and how they make you feel. All right. So these are things within your control, right? So internal locus of control. Many of you, I think, should remember. I think most of you are old enough here to remember about 20 years ago, there was a book that came out that was very popular, and all of the managers made their staff read this, and the name of the book was called Who Moved the Cheese. All right. So does anybody remember that or not? All right. So this is quite an old 20 years ago, right? There was this small book. If you haven't read it after today's webinar, you can go and Wikipedia it, all right? But you can, I mean, the book is like very thin. You can finish it in 30 minutes, but let me give you a summary, okay? So the book is like a fable, if in case you haven't read it. It's a myth. It's not a real story, all right? And the fable is set in this maze, all right? M-A-Z-E, this maze. And in this maze, there lives a group of rats and they live a group of human beings. Now, again, it's not meant to be realistic. This is just a fable, okay? So human beings and rats live in this maze, and at, at the same time every day, in the same place at the maze, somebody would leave them cheese, which is their food and sustenance, okay? So the same time, all right, the same place every day, the rats and the human beings will go there and wait because they've gotten used to the pattern where the cheese will arrive and they get their cheese and they eat, and all of them are very happy. Okay. Now the story begins with the fact that one day they're all waiting there at the set time, but what happens? The cheese doesn't arrive. There's no cheese. Okay. All right. And so what happens? The book charts the two the two different responses are from the rats and the human beings. So how do the rats respond? So the rats wait there 1-2 minutes, and once they realize the cheese is not there, the rats just go off to the other parts of the maze and they start looking in the other parts of the maze, and within 5 minutes they find the cheese somewhere else. Okay, all right, and they eat and they're happy. Now, what do the human beings do? Well, the human beings, right? Basically, they sit there in the same place, and then they have a 1 hour, 2 hour argument about, hey, who moved the cheese? That's why the name of the book. So they argue, hey, this is not fair. Who moved the cheese? How dare they move the cheese? They owe us the cheese, blah, 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 talk. But they're sitting there not doing anything, all right, And as a result, they don't adapt. They don't have a locus of control. They don't do what's within their control. Rather, they are moaning and complaining about what is not within their control. And I think this book really sums up this idea of locus of control. I mean, as we know as adults, many things happen to us not within our control. Like, hey, COVID wasn't within our control. MCO for 2 years wasn't within our control. So many of our businesses suffered. Many jobs were lost. And so as a business leader, as a CEO, we had to think, all right, either I can sit here and complain about how your life is so unfair, all of my plans gone, my business plans, this and that, I'm so disappointed, what's going on? Or I could quickly then think as a CEO and then say, okay, what are the business strategies I need to adopt right now to save my company in 2020? Okay, so that's internal locus of control. Rather than complain, I mean, no point. Right? COVID has happened. Nothing I can do about it. In fact, nothing anybody in the world can do about it. Even governments were helpless. So the focus then is not on what I can do anything about. The focus is on right now, what are constructive things I can do for my company, for my family, for my children, for myself. So developing this internal locus of control, very important. And these are some skills to teach our children. So whenever our children are stuck and they're in a situation where they're crying, they're complaining, oh, I don't know what to do. This something has happened to me. I was doing this group project, then my group kicked me out, or I was doing this, subject and I didn't get the results I wanted, or something bad has happened to them that is difficult. All right. Or sometimes it's as simple as, I'm so hungry. Mom, Dad, I'm so hungry. 5 p.m. I feel like eating. And like I say, rather than you go and cook them food and go and serve them food, this is an opportunity for you to train them and say, hey, what is within your control? Say, good, you're hungry. Okay, so what can you do about it, my friend? Let's think. Okay, think. All right. What are 3, 4 things you can do to help deal with your hunger? Can you make yourself a sandwich? Can you get something from Grab? Can you go to the fridge and see what food is there? All right, if nobody's in the house. Hey, there are 3, 4 things you can do. You're not helpless. All right, immediately the child learns that in most situations, there is always something they can do. Okay, so this is like problem solving skills 101. All right, what is under my sphere of influence? What can I change? Okay, so that's number 2, internal locus of control. Now, those of you who have just joined us, we are going through 7 skills and qualities that we can develop in our children to build up resilience so that they can tahan the pressure, tahan the crisis, tahan the stress, and that when they are in difficult situations in school or at home or later on at work, they know what to do. They're not helpless. Okay, number 3. The third component of resilience is independence. I think this one we know, all right? It's just very difficult for us to let go because let's be honest, the only way our children will learn independence is that we need to slowly let go and gradually make them take charge of parts of their life. All right. I mean, you keep washing their clothes and folding their clothes and putting the clothes in the drawer, they will never learn how to, manage their own clothes. You keep cleaning their shoes for them, or the maid cleans their shoes for them, they'll never learn to take responsibility for cleaning their own shoes. We all clean their room, then they'll never clean their room. All right, correct or not? All right. We keep reminding them about homework. So if parents, Form 4, Form 5, they're not young anymore. In fact, I would say by Form 1, Form 2 already, we should say, hey, look, you are 12, 13, 14 years old already. You're not 5 years old. You're not 7 years old. You're old enough to manage your homework, all right? And so if papa and mommy have to remind you every time, what will happen is then they won't manage themselves because, what's happening is they know, even if I forget, mommy and papa will tell me when. Right? So no need to pack my bag lah. They'll pack for me. No need to study or no need to remind myself or manage my homework because my mom and dad will remind me. All right. So we have to understand, the more we coddle them, the more we micromanage, the more we come in and save the day for them every night, we are not doing them any favors, you know. We are actually we are stunting them. We are stunting their growth. Why? Because they don't need to grow. They don't need to be independent. Okay. Now, again, of course, what I'm saying is do it age appropriate lah. I mean, your 12-year-old is not an adult, all right? So I'm not saying give them, you ask them to do everything themselves. Obviously, you need to think. Husband and wife have to have a committee meeting and decide what is age appropriate. Okay, so for 12 years old, then 14 years old, 15, 16, 17. So gradually you're building more and more independence. So of course, I'm not arguing that the 13-year-old is a 30-year-old person. Not the same thing. Okay, so of course you will still need to support them. You still need to help them. Certain things, particularly when it involves safety, that one you cannot leave to chance, lah, right? So I mean, of course, things like social media, you still need to check. You can't just say, okay, be independent. I don't care what you do. I mean, there are kids 14, 15 that are being basically stalked on the internet, by predators. Now that one you cannot leave them to do, lah, right? So there are certain temptations where you need to step in as a parent, right? But aside from that, what the examples I'm giving here are very simple things that they can start doing for themselves, like housework, like pocket money. So rather than you need money, I just keep giving you, is to say, hey, look, if your pocket money is 150 ringgit a month, that's it. You go and use up your pocket money, then that's it, lah. That's not my problem, all right? You need to learn how to budget. Whether it is canteen food or you want to save the money for something else, these are, I think, simple steps we can take to start training them to be responsible for themselves. Okay, so whether it's housework, whether it's homework, things like that. But the scary thing here is you have to let go lah. All right, and it's a bit like training or teaching your children how to ride a bicycle. Right, at some point you're gonna have to take the training wheels out. Correct enough. Once, as long as the training wheels are there, the one they cannot fall down. That's not really riding a bicycle. Okay, so giving them independence, the analogy is like taking the training wheels away. And when you do that, the scary thing for us as parents is that they may fall. All right. When you learn to ride a bicycle, there may be times where you fall. And in the same way, when I don't remind them to do their homework, or I don't remind them to study for a test, therefore there may be times where they may fail the test. There may be times where they don't pass up their homework. And so as a parent, I need to be willing to let them fall once in a while. As long as it's not dangerous to their well-being, it's not going to be a permanent damage. And look, this one, I think, one school assignment, I mean, this is not the same as, SPM lah, right? This is not the same as A levels. This is not the same as, some life-changing exam. I mean, this one, Form 1, Form 2, is a good time to try. Right? It's a good opportunity to start getting them to stand on their 2 feet and to tell them, hey, look, this is a lesson learned. You forgot your homework, you didn't pass up, the teacher may have scolded you, and good lesson learned. So next time, Papa and Mommy are not going to remind you. You need to be responsible for your work. Okay? All right. Number 4, the fourth quality that is needed in resilience is grit. And grit, which is similar to discipline, self-discipline, I define as action in the absence of inspiration, which means that you do things even when you don't feel like doing it. All right. And this is part of the growing up process. So you're not a child anymore, you're a teenager that is growing up, and you at some point need to realize that you can't just do fun things, right? You can't just do things when you feel motivated. You can't just do things when you enjoy it. All right. Real life and the real world is that sometimes there are going to be things that you don't enjoy, and you still have to push through it. So I give you an example. I mean, when I'm giving career guidance talks to my university students, as you know, I still lecture and teach at Help University. So I've got all these university students going out, right? These are all future lawyers and future, psychologists and teachers and educators and business leaders. And I usually say, when you're picking a job and a profession, all right, your first company, your first job, when you're shopping around and you're seeing what is a good fit for you in terms of your strengths, your interests, I say, look, if you find a job where 60% of the time you are doing what you enjoy and you're doing something fits your strengths, that's very good already. You should take the job. 60, 70%, you're not going to get better than that. All right. And which means that 30, 40% of the time you may be having to do things that you don't necessarily enjoy. But that's part of the job, right? You know, when you talk to adults, hey, we don't enjoy every single minute of our job. Huh? I give you an example. Teachers and lecturers like to teach in the classroom. They like to explain things to students. They like to actually be in the lecture. But none of them enjoy marking exam papers, lah. Correct or not? You know, none of them may enjoy the admin work, but you still have to do it, what, if you're a teacher? So 60-40, lah, like I said, you know. And I think that's a good example of this grid, lah, that hey, that 30-40%, you still have to push through one, you know. Next time when you're a professional, there's no job in the world where you enjoy everything one, you know. But to be a professional, you still need to do it. You know, there are many parts of my job as a CEO I don't enjoy. What I mean, I enjoy many parts of it. I love education, but hey, there are parts of it where I don't enjoy. I don't necessarily enjoy, you know, having difficult conversations with staff. I don't enjoy firing staff. You know, I don't enjoy. I mean, look, there are certain things we have to do that are not the most fun things in the world, but that's part of our responsibility as leaders, you know. And so I think the lesson to children slowly as they're growing up, particularly in their teens, is that you can't just do things when they're fun, right? If you really want to become good at something, whether it's your studies, whether it's music, whether it's sports, hey, no pain, no gain, lah. You know, I think that's the message here. You know, I mean, anything, even even if your child says, "Oh, yeah, I want to be a professional e-gamer, e-sports computer gamer," even that also we tell the child, "Yeah, now you play, you know, just for fun. It's different. Next time, if you're really practicing for a competition in esports, not all of it you will enjoy. You know, I mean, you start practicing 5-6 hours every day. After a while, you also get sick and tired of it. You still have to do it." You know, so that there is no pursuit. Even musicians are like that one. You want to be, you know, you want to be a piano player, you want to be a rock star, you want to be whatever it is. All right. You think Taylor Swift has no discipline? She has to be in the concert every day. You know, she does 300 concerts, you know, every year. You think, you know, every day she feels like going out there, right? Singing the same old song, same old piece every night with energy, enthusiasm. Hey, it takes a lot of discipline to do that. So when, you know, you can give these illustrations to your children and say, hey, in the real world, all right, you want to be successful in anything, no pain, no gain. All right. And you need to learn that. I mean, so whatever you're interested in, even your hobbies, you will have to push through one. That's great. Okay. Um, so I like this quote, you know, this is Joe Girard was a very famous salesperson. I like this quote. The elevator to success is out of order. You have to use the stairs. All right. No shortcuts in life. All right. You want to succeed, you walk. Okay. This is another book I like. You know, this I think is a very American saying, like eat the frog. You know, I didn't know it until one of my American colleagues taught me this. So eat that frog is a figure of speech for saying do something you don't enjoy, but you know you need to do it. Okay. So for example, going jogging. Let's be honest, there are some things as adults also we don't enjoy doing. Many of us don't enjoy exercising. We don't enjoy waking up at 5 a.m. to go for a jog, especially during monsoon season when it's raining, it is cold, it is wet, it is miserable. But hey, if you and I want to keep fit, we still have to do it. So that's eat the frog, right? Or some of us, we don't want to sit down there and answer emails for 2 hours. All of the hundreds of emails that are waiting for you after you come back from your holidays. But you have to do it, you know, right? So I usually, what I do is when we have training and coaching sessions with my young leaders in Help University, my advice is the way you manage your day, when should you eat the frog? Meaning, when should you schedule the activities that you don't like to do, but it is important to do? At the beginning or the end of the day? When do you think? Definitely at the beginning, right? Yeah. You know, that should be the first thing you do in the morning. The first 2 hours, get all of it out of the way. Then you do the rest. The worst thing to do is procrastinate, procrastinate. And some of us do that as well, right? Correct. You know? So we know, yeah, this, I got 7 things to do. The last 2 things are the ones I really don't want to do. So we push, 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 push until 5 p.m. Then, oh, sorry, no time already. Okay, do tomorrow. All right. So the discipline is to say at the beginning of the day at 7, 8 a.m., do this one first. Get it out of the way. So in the same way, sometimes, you know, when I last time when I was helping my children with their studies, I say, look, okay, today we have to do 2, 3 subjects, right? We have to study tonight. Okay, which subject should you start first? Start with the one you least enjoy. Start with that one first. Finish that off first. While you still have the energy and the stamina. Do that one first. Then do the easier subjects later. right? But the eat the frog, I think is a principle, lah, right? Like I say, we cannot raise children that only do what they enjoy doing. Cannot, all right? We need to build that sense of grit and power and discipline to say I'm still willing to do things even when they're not enjoyable. Now, again, that's not to say we torture our children so that the whole of their life also is not enjoyable. All right. I'm not saying that. That's why I talk about the 60-40 principle, right? And usually the way I have trained my own children is you do the work first, and at the end of the day, there's always a treat waiting for you. Right? So it's always you get the reward at the end of the day. So it could be free time, it could be time to talk to your friends, it could be computer time, it could be we watch TV together, it could be we play a game together, it could be ice cream in the fridge that you get to eat, order boba tea, whatever it is, all right? But the treat is only at the end, all right? You eat the frog first. That's the pattern, all right? You do the work first, and at the end, the balance is, hey, you still have a good time. And in fact, the faster you finish your work, the more free time you have, that's the bargain, okay? So it's not, I'm not asking us to, create a timetable where our children are just suffering from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and they hate everything they're doing, then that's not healthy, all right? I think my principle here is that I'm hoping that your children enjoy the most of their day. But like I say, for 30-40% of the things that they have to do, they may not enjoy. It's teaching them how to push through that. Okay. And again, the way here is not to shout at them, not to scold them, not to, I mean, it's not about you rotan them to force them to do it. It's more to say, look, maybe share your own experiences, coach them, hey, papa also doesn't enjoy doing certain things at work. So how do I do it? How do I mentally do certain things at work that I don't enjoy? Share your experiences, share how you get through the day. All right. So it's teaching them skills. It's not, I punish you so that you have to do it. It's teaching them skills so that they know how to do it. Okay. All right. Number 5. Okay. So just 3 more and then we're done. Fighting spirit. Ironically, this was my claim to fame in MBSKLAA. I remember giving a speech many years ago, 1988 or 89. We had a forensic, speech giving competition, and I remember winning the prize with this speech. I gave a speech on fighting spirit, you know, and this is important. Fighting spirit means, hey, look, life is going to deal you setbacks and disappointments. All right, so we've already said you will never win all the time, right? That there are going to be failures. There are going to be things you do and you don't make it. You study hard for the exam and still you don't get the results you want. You train very hard, you still don't win the medal in sports day. All right, you work very hard towards this. You were working so hard, but you still didn't get elected president of the club and society. Hey, look, life is like that one. All right, we don't always get what we want, and as adults, I think we all know this. Okay, this is a truth in life. Right? But we say, look, that's the moment of truth, isn't it? In life, all of us get knocked down. The moment of truth and the test of character is whether I can get up again. And this is where we have to encourage our children to say, hey, look, I know you're disappointed. I know it's sad. You didn't win the prize. I know, you may be crying, you may be sad. And look, this is not the time where we make fun of them. I'm not saying we be cruel to them. So we should be empathetic, we empathize and say, yeah, I know how you feel. I know it's difficult. Yeah. And it's not a pleasant feeling. And Papa, you're sad. I also feel sad for you, right? You're disappointed. I also feel disappointed for you. So I journey with you. And there are many times in my life also, I felt that way. All right. But it's about saying, okay, how do I then coach, encourage you to continue and not be discouraged by this, to get up. All right. But you see, we mustn't be overprotective, right? The secret here is we need to sometimes allow our children to go through disappointment. We cannot always come in and save them. All right. Oh, so they didn't get the medal in sports. They say, okay, don't worry, Papa buy you a $5,000 phone to help you get over the disappointment. Okay, don't you worry. Yeah, I give you my own medal. All right. Or whatever lah, right? You didn't do this, didn't do that. Then as parents, because we don't like to see them unhappy, right? So we swoop in and we think that it's our job to wave a magic wand, take out our wallet, buy them something, give them a treat, just so that they don't feel the disappointment anymore. But that's not the solution, you see. Because look, next time in life, when they are adults, you can't always buy them ice cream. Like each time something happened with the boss, each time they're disappointed at work, you're not going to be around to pick them up, you know. So again, we are not doing them any favors by taking away the disappointment. The goal is to teach them and encourage them, strengthen them, support them, so that they go through the disappointment and they know how to deal with disappointment in a way that is healthy, where they don't hurt themselves, they don't hurt other people. All right. So even the disappointment of, hey, maybe you're in love with this girl or you're in love with this boy, and they don't love you back. And that one, hey, all of us kena before, unrequited love. That's very, very common, right? All of us, you think back when we were teenagers, there were always people that you had a crush on, you are in love with, and they didn't love you back. Hey, all of us got heartbroken before. There's no human being on earth that didn't get heartbroken. But that's why that the 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 key then as a parent is not to say, okay, how do I take away the heartbreak, right? Because that's not possible. The key then is to say, okay, let Papa be with you. I love you. I'm supportive of you. Let's work together. How do you get through the heartbreak? Okay. And how do I encourage you to believe that, look, just because you're heartbroken today doesn't mean tomorrow and the next day and forever you're going to be heartbroken. The fact that at some point in life, all of us are going to meet somebody that will return our feelings. Yeah. You're not going to be alone forever. All of us have gone through periods in life where, like I say, the person you love may not love you back, but this is not the only girl in the world. This is not the only boy in the world. All right. We say many fish in the sea, right? So how do we encourage you to see a better perspective, right? So that you don't get disappointed, you don't get heartbroken, you don't feel as though because I'm heartbroken now means I'm unlovable, I'm unattractive, nobody will ever love me, there's no hope for me. Then they spiral, then you have mental health issues. So when as parents, we're not there to support them and help them understand how to make sense of heartbreak, how to make sense of when the exam results they get is not what they expect. And the fact that sometimes life is not fair, sometimes it's a reality to believe, the paradox that you can work very, very hard and be very honest and do everything you can and still not get the results that you think you deserve. Possible, yeah. I mean, in real life. Okay. And so as parents, I think our job, like I say, is not to take away the disappointment by being overprotective, but to teach them how to go through disappointment. How do you face disappointment? How do you recover from disappointment? What are some things we can do to cheer ourselves up? What are some things to do to get perspective that, okay, just because one part of my life didn't go as I expected doesn't mean all of the parts of my life are bad. There are many things I can be thankful for. There are many things I still have, in my life that I can be grateful for. I still have parents who love me. I have friends that support me, so this is where, like I say, the coaching is very important. All right. And by teaching them to go through small disappointments, you're preparing them later on in life when they have big disappointments, like they don't get into the university they want, they don't get the course they want, they don't get the job they want, all right, or they get retrenched from their work, or they get rejected in a relationship, then they are more ready as young adults to be able to face disappointment, and they have the fighting spirit to fight back and say, okay, I'm going to bounce back. Okay, I'm not going to let this defeat me. Okay, and there are many stories. So in my notes, I won't go through all of it now, but there are many stories we can tell. Storytelling is a very powerful way to show them that successful people have gone through disappointment. I love this quote by Steve Jobs. I'm convinced that about half of what separates successful people from non-successful people is perseverance, going through the difficult times. These are stories some of you may know. Einstein, I mean, he was a slow learner, man. The parents thought he actually had a learning difficulty. He didn't speak until he was 4, couldn't read until he was 7. I mean, in today's age, he would be considered a slow child. He would be in the last class in our schools. Teachers describe him as mentally slow. His first tertiary education, he was refused. He couldn't even get into the polytechnic. His first PhD thesis was actually rejected, you know, and yet he became Albert Einstein. You see? So amidst all of these setbacks, disappointments, failures, you build success. All right. Rodin, the famous French sculptor who sculpted the Thinker. This is a very famous sculpture. If you go to the middle of Paris, there's actually a museum just for Rodin. All right, and the sculpture is there. He couldn't even get into art school. The family. I mean, call him terrible things, man. This is such a unsupportive family. The uncle call him cannot be educated, no home already. Right. So again, these are people who have gone through a lot of hardships, in order to be where they are. Walt Disney, he was fired by his previous job for lack of creativity, before he actually built the Walt Disney Empire. George Lucas, he couldn't get funding for Star Wars. They all thought it was a stupid idea. I mean, most of us are old enough in 1977 to remember Star Wars. He couldn't get the funding to make the picture because the studio executives, 7 of them, all rejected him, laughed him out of the office because they thought, fighting in space is such a dumb idea. Nobody's going to watch this movie. All right, Henry Ford, we know lah, one of the fathers of modern industrialization. He went bankrupt 5 times. I mean, just think, not once, not twice, 5 times his business went bankrupt before he started Ford Motors. I mean, most of us, we are so, most of us are probably scared to be entrepreneurs. We start one business, it goes bankrupt, most of us will give up already and say, okay, maybe I'm not a business person, all right? You go bankrupt twice, definitely most of us will have given up already. But I guess my message is these tough characters, sometimes when we see successful figures, our assumption is that these successful people just experience success. All right, that's our inaccurate assumption that it's just victory after victory after victory, and they're just winning all the time, and wow, so easy for them, and I'm a failure. But I think these stories to remind our children is no, it's not true. You go through failure. All of these great people also went through failure. They've all been in the same place as you have. I mean, Michael Jordan, I love this quote. I'm sure many of you have seen this quote, right? He talks about all of the failures. I've missed 9,000 shots. I've lost 300 games, 26 times. In fact, Michael Jordan, by the way, was cut from his high school basketball team. He was actually, not even in the first team, all right? So disappointments build character. So it's encouraging our children to say, hey, look, I know it's difficult, huh? I know it feels lousy right now. It's difficult. It's okay to feel this way. It's very natural, but I just want to encourage you, all right? Just because you're going through a tough time now doesn't mean, these dreams that you have or this ambition that you have, it doesn't mean you're going to be the failure for the rest of your life. It's not true. Not true at all. All people who achieve anything meaningful in life have gone through difficult times and failures. So we are here to support you. I look at you and I still see a young man, young woman that can do so many things. There's so many gifts you have, so many talents you have, so much worth you have, so many unique things you can do that, your papa and mommy see in you, So hey, we want to support you. Don't feel just because you fail doesn't mean you're a failure. All right, so I think that's the message here. All right, I like Jack Ma. This one is even more harsh. Jack Ma, his work ethic: never give up. Today is hard, tomorrow will be worse. But the day after tomorrow will be sunshine. So again, you have to have the grit to go through it. Okay, 2 more. Number 6, develop EQ. All right, so the idea here is develop emotional intelligence. So there are 3 basic skills in emotional intelligence. All right, that you can teach even young children and teenagers. One is identifying how do you feel. All right, so it's teaching our children to articulate and identify their mood. How do you feel today? And it cannot just be okay, not okay. Like most of our teenagers, that's how they speak. Okay, not okay, good, bad. All right, so that's not good enough. It's about saying, okay, what exactly, how do you feel? Okay, not okay means what? Is it, are you stressed? Are you angry, frustrated, tired, irritated? All of these are different emotions. Frustrated is not the same thing as angry. Angry is not the same thing as stress. Stress is not the same thing as sad. Sad is not the same thing as irritated, right? All of these are different emotions. Happy, excited. worried, uncertain, So as they grow up, it's about encouraging your child to be more sensitive and articulate how they feel. Now, that's important because if I don't know how I feel, I don't know how to manage the emotion, right? So, for example, if I don't know I'm stressed, how to manage stress? So if I'm so insensitive, I don't realize that I'm getting stressed. There's no way for me to do anything about it, right? So I think that's important. Understanding the emotion. So now I know I'm stressed. Number two, why am I stressed? Where's the stress coming from, right? So am I stressed because of my exam next week? Am I stressed because I've got a relative who is not feeling well? I'm worried about my grandfather or grandmother's health, and that's why I'm stressed. Am I stressed because I'm getting bullied in school? Am I stressed because, I'm scared of the teacher who may scold me tomorrow because I didn't finish the homework? So it's about being clear. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling angry? What am I angry at? Who am I angry at? Am I angry at myself or am I angry at somebody else? And by the way, these are skills even adults should learn. Many of us also are hopeless at this one, right? So many of us, that's why we misdirect our emotion. We're actually angry at ourselves, but we go and scold our children, right? We're actually angry at the boss, but we go and, shout at our husband or wife, because we are not, we need to develop better EQ so that we know how we are feeling, why we are feeling this. And then therefore we can do number three, which is then we can manage the emotion. So when I know I'm stressed, I know why I'm stressed, then I can take appropriate action. And again, this is where parents can help. You can coach your child. So if your child says, hey, look, I'm stressed. Yeah, papa, mommy, I'm very stressed about the exam tomorrow. I'm a bit worried. I'm not sure whether I'm prepared. So our reaction can't be, don't be stressed. Stop being stressed, our reaction should be, okay, let's think about things we can do to help manage your stress. All right, so how does papa manage my stress? When I'm stressed at work, what do I do? Maybe I do things I enjoy. I go and take a walk, I play sports, I jog, I swim, I watch movies, I share with somebody that I know, a confidant, like your mummy. I share with my wife, I share with my best friend. I get emotional support. So what can I do? So I'm sharing with my child. These are practical tips for what a human being can do when they are managing stress in a constructive way. All right. So that doesn't hurt other people and doesn't hurt themselves. So I think this is our role. All right. Because just telling them, don't be stressed. Why are you so stressed? You're stressed about nothing. That's not helpful, you see. That's like telling your 5-year-old that has nightmares at night, they don't want to sleep in the dark. That's like saying, hey, don't be scared. Why are you scared? That's how not to be scared, right? You know, a child that age, it's natural for them to be scared. So our job as parents is, not, you can't make it go away just because you say don't be angry, don't be stressed, don't be scared. We have to help teach them how to manage their fear, right? How to manage their anger. What are things they can do? So, for example, in our school, in Help International School, one of the strategies we teach children when you're angry, when you're about to do something that you shouldn't do, we say push the wall. Go to the wall and push very hard. And this is a very good exercise because when you push the wall, you're letting out energy. You're pushing the wall, you're not hurting anybody. Just push, take a few deep breaths. After 10 seconds, okay, you feel a bit calmer. Very practical advice. I mean, even for adults, right? Before you send the email, before you say anything you're going to regret, before you go and punch the other child, all right? Calm down first, push the wall, take a deep breath, all right? So that's an example of, as parents, it's up to us to give them practical advice on how to manage the emotion, okay? It's not about scolding them for having the emotion. All of us also have emotions, but parents, we also feel stressed. We also get angry. We also lose our temper. All right, I mean, it's a human thing to feel the emotion, but we want to teach children to be resilient in the sense of learning how to master their emotions so that the emotions don't master you. Okay, last one. We end for tonight. Growth mindset. So the last, I think, quality and component of resilience is something called the growth mindset, right? And this one, let me give you an example. Okay, so if I were to ask you this question, can you run the marathon, which is 42 kilometers? I wouldn't be surprised if most of us say we cannot lah right now. If you ask me to run the marathon today, I cannot do it. I probably can only run 5 kilometers. Then after that, I will collapse. All right. And so, but what if I gave you 1 year to prepare for the marathon? I said, okay, you prepare and train to run the marathon in December 2026. So you have 12 months to train. Boleh ke? Boleh. So your training schedule will look something like this, right? What you do is you gradually build up the stamina, correct? So this graph basically charts what distance you can run. So for those of you who never run at all, maybe you can start with the first month is just 1 kilometer, right? Just start running 1 kilometer, run, walk. And after a while, by February, maybe you're up to 3 or 4 kilometers. And by March, you're up to 7 kilometers. And by May, you're up to 12 kilometers. By July, you're up to 20 kilometers. So slow lah. You say gradually, you run 3 times a week, you will build up stamina. Your leg muscles will be built up so that you do this. And by the way, all of us can do this one. Huh? In fact, if you go and Google and YouTube, they'll say you can actually train for marathon in 4 months. 12 months, 100%, all of us can do it. Okay? It's just a matter of discipline. Now, my question is this. Let's say using this schedule, if I were to meet you in July next year, and I ask you in July next year, are you ready to run the marathon? Can you run the marathon? What would our answer be? Right? So maybe some of us will answer, no, I can't do it. Right? But actually, the right answer is not yet. So you ask me in March, I say, well, not yet. You ask me in May, not yet. July, not yet. September, not yet. Now, not yet is a very important phrase to learn for ourselves in building resilience, because that's the growth mindset. Not yet is not the same as cannot. It's not the same as because I can't do it today means forever also I cannot do it. You see, a growth mindset means, yeah, I'm learning. I'm not there yet, but you know what? I'm learning and I'm getting better. And in a few months' time, I'll be able to do it. All right. So when you apply this to the marathon, it can be applied to anything else. Are you good at math? So I might say, not yet. Maybe I'm not great at my math yet, but it doesn't mean I can't learn math tomorrow. It doesn't mean in 3-4 months' time I cannot become good at math. Are you good at essay writing? Not yet. Right? So I acknowledge, yes, I'm not good at everything now, but not yet means I believe I can learn. I believe my brain has the capacity to master things that I don't know how to do well now. Right? So that's in a nutshell the growth mindset. And very important. What has this got to do with resilience? You see, when we feel helpless, when we as human beings feel that what to do, very hopeless lah. I SPM math, is coming up. I'm bad at math. I'm always bad at math. I will forever always be bad in math. Then I take the stance of a helpless person, and there's nothing I can do. A growth mindset empowers you. You see, now that's resilience. A growth mindset gives you the hope that you can learn anything. So for example, hey, you can't speak a language. Can you learn? Can. You can't have a skill. Can you learn? Can. And when you think about it as adults, all of us are like that. What? Come on. In our work, every week, we are learning new things. Correct? If we don't learn new things, most of us will not be alive anymore. Most of us will not be still employed. So for example, how many of us 20 years ago know how to use AI? There don't even have AI 20 years ago. We don't have, how do you use mobile technology? How do you use computers? How do you use Microsoft PowerPoint? Well, 30, 40 years ago, mana ada. All of these things are things we learn now. We are learning how to use AI now. I was a psychologist in background, right? My background was as a lecturer, as an academic. I didn't have any financial skills. I wasn't trained as a CEO. I had to learn that. Right? 14 years ago, when I became CEO, I had to learn how to read balance sheets, P&L statements, cash flow statements, projected, look at all of the financial ratios to be able to judge and gauge whether my company is in a financially strong state. That's not something I learned in school. That's not something I learned in university, right? The growth mindset means just because I don't have a finance background doesn't mean I can't learn it, right? It's just up to me. If I decide to learn, I can learn it. If I decide to master, I can master it. Okay, so this is an attitude that is very important as part of uh, growth mindset. And look, I mean, when I give this talk, because by the way, this is the same talk I don't only give to parents, I give to my students as well. So when they come in for orientation, my new university students, I say, hey, these are the 7 resilience skills you need. You need a growth mindset. And I always use examples of my own graduates. So I say, hey, look at Vernon Tian. He started Zeus Coffee. He was a law graduate, didn't have any business background. The story of Zeus. He and his partner started Zeus in 2019, 1 year, 3 months before COVID started. So they started their first outlet. Then lockdown happened, poof, everything closed down. So at that point, I mean, Vernon, very easily could have given up and say, hey, look, I don't care. I mean, what to do? I mean, nothing to do. But then they move into online delivery very quickly. They move into online coffee services. And as a result, they grew even in spite of COVID. Now they've got more than 1,000 outlets. Aaron Sama was a technopreneur. Doris Wong listed in the NASDAQ stock market. So, I mean, I talk about all of these graduates of mine. I don't have time to go through now, but, Esther was a psychologist who went into financial consulting in Boston Group. I've got, I know Nadira was from PJ. She studied with help in psychology, worked very, very hard. She wasn't from a very rich family, worked very hard, got a scholarship to go to Cambridge University to do a PhD. Sue Lee, same thing, all from families that were not very rich. Sue Lee worked very hard when she was in help and then got a Fulbright scholar to do a PhD in the US. Raymond Ram, I just interviewed him. He's the president of Transparency International. He was on my psychology students. But he came up with a dream, even though he was from psych, and he said, I want to do forensics. I want to find a way to reduce corruption in the country. It did it. Jo Chabet had a heart for autistic children. So she started Early Autism Project. This was her, in action. All right. So these are all what we call achievers. These are people with a growth mindset that that were daring enough to expand themselves to achieve their goals. Beating was also a clinical psychologist. No IT background, but in the last 3 years, she has actually developed a mobile app, a mobile game that can be played by trauma victims, people who have been traumatized to lessen to stabilize their mood. And she's a psychology grad, not even an IT graduate. So this is a growth mindset. People that are willing to learn outside of their areas, that are not limited by whatever skills they have. All right. Then of course, whether you're in, sports or whatever it is. So I usually use all of these stories of people who have demonstrated resilience to encourage and inspire my students to say, hey, look, these former help students used to be in the same class as you now. They used to sit in the same chair as you're sitting now. So don't think that you can't achieve great things in your life, that you can't grow up to be a healthy, resilient, mentally well young adult, just like these others. All right. So, okay, I stopped there. And as promised, this is my email address. So if some of you want to email me with questions or you want the notes, you can email me and I'm happy to email you. All right. So thank you so much for giving me this chance to share. I'm going to pass the time back to Dato Indrani for a Q&A session. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Goh. I think that was so interesting. Even I found it really very enlightening. Although I'm not married and I don't have children, but I have my nephews. And, I definitely, resonate with all the points that you have raised. And he's also slightly autistic. So sometimes I feel that, sometimes I get so angry. And as you say, with the stress of work, we tend to kind of put it on them. So we have to really be careful. I would like to welcome those who are online, who would like to ask any questions. You can actually either put them in the chat if you don't want to, orally say it. You can always put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. If not, I will just perhaps ask a couple of questions. We have
Sure.
till perhaps, Dr. Go, can we go till 10 o'clock?
Sure. Please
If
go
that's
ahead, Dato.
okay.
Yes.
So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat, or you can just raise your hand and unmute yourself. But I would just maybe start the ball rolling by maybe asking you, a question. In the workshops that you deal with parents,
Mm.
what do you find the most common misconception that parents have about building resilience, and how can we correct that approach?
Thank you so much, Dato, for that question. I think one common misconception we sometimes have as parents is that resilience is something that is born with, it's natural. The idea that some kids are more resilient, some kids are less resilient, it's a genetic or biological thing. It's not true. I mean, resilience we learn in psychology is something you learn, as you grow up, and so I want to encourage all parents, just because your child may not have resilience now, doesn't mean they can't develop it. Okay, so that's why I'm giving this workshop lah. I mean, if there was no hope to build resilience, then I'm wasting time giving this workshop. So I think the fact that I've given you 7 things you can work on with your children is meant to encourage you to say that it's never too late. Huh? So whether your children is 12 years old or 14 or 15 or 17 or even adults, I mean, when I do this workshop for adults, they're already 20, 30, 40 years old. Even adults, we can learn to build up our resilience. So I think that's the one common misconception, that many parents feel that, the child's resilience level is genetic, and it's something that they're born with. So I'm here to say not true. We learn it with experiences, and it's true that your children may all have different personalities, but all of them can learn resilience.
Thank you, Dr. Go. I think we have Deirdre. If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. This is Daniel here, Deirdre's husband. I just
Oh,
want
okay.
to talk
Hi.
about, thank you, Dr. Go, for sharing.
Hi.
Talk about
Sure.
resilience. One thing
Yep.
we notice in quite a few of the our businesses in Malaysia, is that the kids behave like as if that they were not taught how to speak up to
Okay.
the older generation. So they
Okay.
come quite stunted. And do you think it's important, 2 things? Number one, for parents to encourage the kids to discuss and speak their views, even when they think the parents are wrong, and whether it's important also for schools to also reinforce that, right? If you feel that your parents are missing something, or they may not be doing the right thing as parents, and you need to buck up, it's important for both parents to teach that to the kids and for schools to reinforce that as well. Not in a rude way, of course, but in a
Yep.
constructive manner. And
Yep.
it's because a lot of them seem to be quite stunted these days for
Yep.
some reason.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good observation, right? I think, Daniel, it's something that a lot of employers and even universities are observing. But it's not a new thing, lah. I think the phenomena, it's not just this generation. Even in our generation, as many of you know, Asians, we were sort of known as to be quite, non-confrontative. I think that's the word, right? So when I used to send my students to like Western countries, UK, US, Australia, the comment I usually get from the universities is to say, hey, your students are very nice, very very quiet, they work hard, they are very compliant, but very quiet, that's the observation. In tutorials and lectures, they don't speak up, they are a bit shy, a bit embarrassed. So I think your observation is true, and it's been there for a long time, because unfortunately, many of our schools and our families, if you think about it, the environment, as you say, doesn't encourage them to speak up, right? Now, I think things are changing a bit, but if you recall, even when we were in school last time, many of our classes, all right. I mean, the rule was, hey, shut up and just copy from the board and don't make noise, man. In fact, that was the key rule. Don't make noise. The quiet class is the good class. Noisy class means, it is seen as a bad thing, right? So many of us grew up quiet is good. So we train ourselves to shut up, lah. We go to meetings in the office, we keep quiet, and we're expecting the boss speak, and we just listen. So I think you're right that a certain level of encouragement, getting our children to communicate, okay, in a way that is respectful, is useful. I mean, I remember when my children were also quite introverted. They were quite quiet, and so I remember to help my daughter, who is now graduated from university already, but when she was 3, 4, 5 years old, she was very quiet. One of the things I would do is that when I come back from work, I would make it a point to have a 30-minute conversation with her. So I would sit down with her, I put away all of our phones, devices, and we would talk. All right. I would lift her and put her on the kitchen countertop so we are eye level. And I would sit there and, hey, we talk about fun things, talk about our day, talk about movies, talk about whatever, whatever that is fun. But I felt that as a father, I need to give her the practice. Yeah. I need to give her the confidence to speak. So again, you learn how to speak by practice. So I think your point is a well taken one. And I think schools, those of you who are school educators here, that's why it's important. So I know like there's a time to be quiet in the class, but there's also a time where we need to encourage more engagement and interaction in our class. Because if they are not learning to speak, to discuss things in the class, ask questions when they're not sure, be willing to challenge ideas, debate ideas in school, then by the time they come to university and work, then they're really underprepared, it's not that they can't speak, yeah? And it's not that they don't have good ideas. In many cases, it's that they just don't have the confidence to actually voice their opinions. So that's why communication skills is important. I mean, ironically, yesterday and today, we're actually doing a communication workshop for senior executives in health. So we've got about 50 executives from different companies, banks and MNCs, GLCs, all there yesterday and today and tomorrow. And I'm tomorrow going to give them a workshop on storytelling. And these are 40-year-old, 50-year-old adults who also don't know how to communicate, scared to communicate. So we are giving them the confidence, we are giving them the encouragement to say, you have a voice. Don't be so insecure. There's something in your mind that is valuable. You have an idea that is valuable. Don't be afraid to share it. All right. I've got a question here in the chat, so I'm just going to read it out. All right. How parents manage their anger when their kids have done or said something that is very okay. So I want to say something here. This is valuable advice. Okay. In the early teens, meaning like 12, 13, 14, 15, if your children are in their early teens, there is something you need to understand about their brain development. All right, so this is neuropsychology, this is neurology. The unfortunate thing for many of our children is in that early teen period, all right, the part of the brain that is emotional is developing faster. But the part of the brain, which is the frontal lobe, which is in charge of control, the part of the brain that stops them from saying things without thinking, that part of the brain is slower to develop. Okay, so imagine there's an imbalance. The emotional part develops faster. The self-control part develops slower. All right, it doesn't catch up until about 16, 17, 18. All right, and that means that you have to understand sometimes the way you have to treat your teenager, the way you have to see your teenager, you cannot take what they say personally, all right? Because it's almost like you're dealing with somebody with brain damage. That's the example I use. And in fact, there are some really good psychologists. They wrote a book, one of the best books I've read about adolescence. It says, okay, as parents, you have to see it like your child has a brain abnormality for 3 years. And so they're going to say things, horrible things. They are not in control. They have tantrums, right? I'm sure 13, 14, 15, you've seen, you try to take away their phone. You take away their technology and see what happens, right? So they throw tantrums. But I want to assure you, a lot of times the reason is because they are not in control of their emotions. And what will happen is about 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, they themselves will regret what they've said. They feel very guilty. Without you even saying anything, they will feel guilty. So usually when your child is throwing a tantrum, right? Like it says here, they're saying terrible things, you're about to fight. My advice for parents is you withdraw. Meaning you take a step back and say, okay, look, we are both angry. You're angry. I give us time to calm down. I'm not going to talk about this. Okay, let's disengage, we call it. All right. So meaning your role is to what they call what is the term again? De-escalate the situation. All right. So take time. You say, okay, you be by yourself, I'll be by myself. If not, I'm also going to lose my temper. You will lose your okay. Everybody calm down. Okay. 15, 20 minutes. Then that when everything is calmed down, then you re-engage. right? So that's an important skill, because you see, when they are losing their temper, like I say, their brain is not functioning properly. I mean, it's a bit like, hey, some of the elderly population at 60, 70, they get dementia. Sometimes they also lose their temper. As adults, we know what we don't take it personally, right? Because we know dementia, they're not remembering things, they are paranoid, sometimes they lose their temper. It's part of the disease, right? So we don't blame them, right? And we don't take what they say personally. So the same thing with your teenager. So you need to back off, give them some time, and then in 20, 30 minutes, when everything is calm, then you can re-engage again. And of course, I'm not saying you excuse their behavior. If they've said things that are very rude and cruel, when everything is calmed down, then you can share and say, hey, look, I know you felt very angry or frustrated, but look, what you said just now was really hurtful. I mean, this is very disrespectful. All right. And in the future, we need to find a way to help you manage. Okay, so these are some ideas. Next time when you're feeling very angry, these are a few things you can do to help you manage your anger. But look, it's very hurtful what you say, and we don't accept that kind of language in this house. So you can actually reprimand, you can make very clear that you don't accept that behavior. Okay, so you can be firm, but don't do it when the emotions are high. So when they are shouting, you shout, they shout, 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 shout. Basically, you're escalating. But you have to understand, at that time, as a 13, 14, they cannot control their emotions, but you can, right? So you have the maturity and the control to, like I say, disengage. All right. So if that's happening frequently, a lot of tantrums, a lot of arguments, the tip that I give you is the next time it happens, just back off for a while. All right. Disconnect for a while, and then when everything is calm, then go and say, okay, look, let's talk about what happened just now. All right. And again, don't treat them like the enemy, lah, right? It's not your son or daughter that is the enemy. It's the fact that the emotions they don't know how to control. So don't treat them like the enemy. Just because they are rude and all that doesn't mean they suddenly become evil people. Like I say, it's just that they are going through feelings and emotions and they don't know how to control it. Right? They are not they're not disciplined and mature enough to control their feelings. Okay, so this is where again you have to coach lah. You have to say, okay, let Papa help you. Okay, the next time you're feeling like that, these are few things you can do. Okay, I give you a punching bag there. Go and punch the bag. Go and do the wall. Go for a jog. Okay, these are 4, 5 things, and that's why my former student Limbiting created that game lah. There was a game that, okay, when you're feeling very mad, okay, just play the game for 5, 10 minutes. You regulate, you calm down your emotions. But there are activities you can do to help yourself calm yourself. Then we can talk. Okay, but don't have the discussion when both your emotions are high. That one will never end well, right? They will end up saying things they regret. You will also end up saying things you regret. It's never a good idea. Okay, so as long as they are safe, disengage. Now, number 2, how to react when, okay, so I've said now how when things like that happen, rebellious time. So like I say, the good news is it will not last forever. Okay, so that's the good news. Okay, 12, 13, 14, 15, you observe that, but towards 16, 17, 18, that will die down naturally, because then the brain will develop in a way where they will then have more emotional control. So that's why by the time they're 17, 18, you don't usually observe that kind of behavior anymore. All right. And it gets less and less. All right. So your role is to help them manage, but like I say, de-escalate first. Okay, de-escalate first. Okay, what else? Yeah. Sometimes I look, all teenagers think they're smarter than their parents. Like we also, when we were their age, we also thought we were smarter than everybody else. So this is where sometimes we have to teach them to be humble, but don't worry. I mean, that's not a uncommon phenomena. All right. So again, you are still the parent. I mean, and in the end, you are still the boss of the house. Okay. So it's okay to give them some freedom, but within boundaries, within parameters. It's your right as a parent to still say, hey, look, I respect you, I love you, I'm on your side, I'm not your enemy. Okay, do you understand enough? What Papa is doing is not here to kill your joy, kill your fun. I'm not trying to break you as a person. I'm your greatest supporter. I'm the one who love you the most. My job is to keep you safe. My job is to help you grow and develop. My job is to try to give you the happiest life you can live. All right. So don't treat me like the enemy. right? So this is important, right? That you have to reaffirm, right? When I discipline you, when I set boundaries, it's because of your safety. I want to make sure you're going to be all right. And so I think by the age of 15, 16, you can be very honest and say, okay, hey, the reason why we limit technology time to 2 hours a day is because, I don't want you to be addicted to that. I'm fine with you playing games for a while, but I want you to do other interests. So you pick lah. What else can you do? You want to play football? Okay, come, we go and play football together. You want to go outdoors? Let's do it. You want to have another hobby? Let's do it. So I give you an example. So my son, like most children, also was, becoming addicted to technology. So what my wife and I did was, when he was about 14, 15, we asked him, what are your interests? Okay. So we were very transparent with him to say, hey, look, it's not that we are anti-technology. We know you enjoy being on the, on the computer, but we want you to live a full life because there's a danger for people to get addicted, right? So we want you to do other things because if not, then your life becomes very narrow. So we said, you give us interest. So he says, okay, I want to try scuba diving. Okay, good. So all of us took scuba diving with him, by the way. That's the sacrifice parents make. So my wife and I, we all went to get our PADI certification, 3, 4 years ago. We all started to dive. Now we are all, advanced divers. We took him to Tioman, we took him to Komodo, we took him to Indonesia, Philippines, all that. So we all go and do it together, and we love it. He likes it, we love it. He wants to go hiking. So we took him hiking. I mean, this 50-year-old man here, have to go and train, go up Kinabalu, go up Rinjani, go up to do all of these hikes because my son wants to do that. And you want to encourage him, right? You say don't want technology, so go hiking, play games, play basketball, football. He's into photography. He's a great videographer. So we said, okay, we save the money together, all right? He does household chores and homework, and we save the money and we get him a camera, right? So and he does, all of his stuff, and we encourage that. We take him to camera events. This year we've gone to 3 or 4 all these professional videography events where he can learn, right? To hone his skills. I mean, he's still only 16, right? But like I say, that's the way you do it. So you don't just take away. You need to actually offer them something in return. So for example, for those of you who, you're worried about, hey, my child is too engrossed with technology. The solution is not just to take away the technology. The solution is to replace it with other things they enjoy doing.
Dr. Goh, there's another question. Yeah.
Okay. So there's another one by Deirdre, right? Okay, our 13-year-old has the impression that it's the it's the parents start arguments and then they play the victim to their friends. Do you think? I mean, well, look, okay, let me just say, all children will complain about us to their friends, lah, right? So this one it's normal. Don't take it too personally, but so look, I think it's a good time to reflect, yeah, Deirdre. So if my child is complaining, hey, you always start the fights, you start the arguments, maybe it's a good time for us to reflect and say, yeah, is this really true or not? But all right, let's be honest, sometimes our children can be drama kings and drama queens as well, right? So this is where don't get too disturbed and don't get too worried about it. Let's be honest, all children complain about something about their parents. None of us are perfect. All right. How do you express to your kids when you know that your kids' friends are not a good influence? Yeah, I tell them straight. So I think be honest, you don't need to beat around the bush, and you can just say why, okay, why am I concerned? Why am I concerned that this friend of yours may not be a good influence? By the time they are teenagers, 13, 14, 15, 16, I think you can talk to them in a way that is quite clear, transparent, and to the point. No need to wayang kulit, no need to tai chi, no need to beat around the bush. Just say, hey, look, this particular fan, I'm a bit worried because I don't know, these friends, the way they spend money I mean, we are not that rich. So maybe the influence is they teach you to waste money. Or this friend, I'm worried about, are they on drugs or not? Right? And I don't want you to get, I don't mind you being friends with them, but I need to know that you're strong enough that when they do certain things, you know how to say no. And by the way, on that point, you want to train your children to say no to peer pressure, right? To be resilient and tough enough that certain times when their friends ask them to do certain things, they say, no, 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 you do, I'm not willing to do. Right? You cheat, I'm not willing to cheat. You take drugs, I'm not willing to take drugs, that kind of thing. The best way to train them to do that is, like early on, Daniel said, like, you have to train them to communicate and be assertive, even if it is to us, all right. So that's why, we need to be careful. If in the house we don't allow our children to voice grievances, disagreements, even when they don't agree with us, right? But teaching them to voice it in a respectful way to us, it's very important, right? Because as you know, sometimes we also make mistakes. But, sometimes the things we do are not consistent. So getting the child to actually say, hey, Papa, I don't agree with this. I'm not comfortable with this, is actually good practice, because by learning to voice disagreement with us, learning the courage, not easy to do it, they are practicing to do that with their friends as well. Whereas if you raise very compliant children, meaning you raise the child, everything also they agree with one, because you break their spirit, and we teach them, okay, look, I say you just do, don't think about it. Your job is just to follow. We are actually training the child to just conform, right? And don't forget, you're not the only influence, So you may think very good, they conform to whatever I want to say, but you're also teaching them to conform to their friends, right? So I think the way to do it is, okay, put it this way, um, you you you're not going to forever be able to uh protect your children from bad influence, right? And I want to say this, my observation sometimes in schools and all that is, sometimes the kids that, it's very hard to predict who are the friends of your children that are the bad influences. All right. Sometimes there are some children who are very good in front of the adults. Wow, they are so nice. They talk well. They are very polite. They are so good. And sometimes when the adults are not here, they are the worst influences. So sometimes when there are cases of indiscipline, cheating, drug cases, sometimes when I see the children, hey, the parents cannot believe it, man. Because nobody suspects these kids. So I'm just saying, be careful about judging a book by its cover. All right. So the way to do it is that it's impossible to protect your children from bad influences, because at some point the world is not perfect, lah, right? They're going to come into contact, whether it is in school, university, or work. They're going to come into contact with bad people, with people who are bad influences. The solution is not to keep them, because you cannot keep them forever. I mean, just think about ourselves. All of the bad people we are influenced by. Hey, every day we meet bad people in our workplace, in our world, in our society, in our country. The solution is to toughen them up, so that they're not scared to say no. They don't get bullied by other people. Just because other people pressure them, they are not willing to give in to the pressure. I think that's the key. Okay. Um, okay, maybe one last one. Actually, it's about parents complaining to their friend. Okay, got it.
That's the
Sorry.
earlier one. Yeah.
Okay, it's parents complaining to their friend. Oh, okay, sorry. All right. So parents start yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I think you're right, Deirdre. I think sometimes it does happen, lah, right? So this is where we also need to be sensitive, lah, right? I mean, um, um, parents, I think it's normal, and typical that we vent sometimes when we are frustrated with our children. We go and talk to other parents about it. But I think it's important that we also respect our children, lah, so that we don't embarrass our children by sort of, exposing them and, spreading the word, hanging our dirty laundry in public. I think we also need to be respectful to them. I mean, and to respect their privacy, respect what's happening in the home, and look, like I said, I want to maybe end with this. We talked today about building our children's resilience. As parents, also we need to build resilience, right? It's not easy being a parent. Our children are not perfect; they will never be perfect, right? Sometimes they frustrate us, they stress us out. So we also need to lead by example, lah. So those 7 things that I thought about today, we should also go back and reflect, are these qualities that we have developed in ourselves? Do I have grit? Do I have a growth mindset? Right? Do I have discipline? Right? So these are good things to reflect, because parenting is not tough. And I want to encourage all of you, we are not perfect. we're all trying our best, and that's just do the best that you can. All right. So you should be forgiving of yourself also. Like, all of us make mistakes, one, including myself. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. All the best. I'm gonna pass the time back to Dato Indrani. And I wish you all the best in your parenting. Feel free to email me. All right. Thank you, everybody.
So, everyone, I think we've come to the end of what I think has been really an incredibly insightful and very important session. And on behalf of the Federation of Methodist Schools Alumni Associations Malaysia and MBSKL Alumni Association, I would like to extend our deepest and most sincere gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Goh Chee Leong. Dr. Goh, thank you very much. I think I learned quite a bit as well, and not only for sharing your immense expertise, but also with such clarity and compassion. I think I just like the way you delivered, and you've taken such, I think, a complex and often very overwhelming topic for parents, and you have given us, I think, a very clear practical roadmap, that 7 qualities, quite straightforward, and something that is more actionable, that I know that parents can actually take. And definitely, looking at moving forward, I think what is more important is that how can now parents take this and translate that into making our kids more resilient. So I think with that, before I say my final round of thanks, I would also like to thank our participants who joined us today. We had 15 at one point, and I think that's the number that actually registered. So I'm glad that everyone came for the session, and I think the engagement as well was quite good. Some questions that came forward, and this made the dialogue very I would say meaningful. So I would just say now, stay safe, stay connected. And I think Dr. Goh has given his contact, and if there's anything that parents would like to clarify, please feel free. So thank you very much for joining us, and so goodbye. Thank you.